On the bench today we have a Uniden Madison. This is the last version of the radio, so it has the digital clock. Actually, let me reach over here. The customer also sent a new old stock Uniden Grant LT to have this done as well. All I had to do to this was replace the electrolytic capacitors, remove the corrosive glue, and unlock the clarifier. Other than that, still a stock as original brand new radio. Still even has that's why the faceplate may look a little kind of funky. It's because it still actually has the plastic protection over the faceplate decal there. Now this one is used, but it's really nice condition. It does have one little minor imperfection in the top of the bezel here, which I'll show once I get it done and all put back together. Other than that, it was in great shape. It doesn't look like it was really used a whole lot. I'd say it was probably plugged in for a while, and I'm going to show you why I say that. But as far as use goes, I don't think it was used that much, and it was taken really good care of. Very clean on the inside. I haven't cleaned anything yet on this. Let's see, I just got done recapping the radio and removing the glue, and I'm moving on to the one thing that needs to be taken care of. So if you own one of these, if it's still working, I don't care. If you're going to plug this thing in the wall, this is something you need to do. The caps go bad, they cause problems in these. Now this, unlike some radios, caps can actually leak electrolyte and damage circuit traces. This is radios like this, you usually don't have a problem like that. The problem you're going to have is this, and it's not even so much the clock, it's this switch assembly. I've shown this before, but every time I get one of these I like to show this because this is something you should really do. The radio is killing itself. Anytime this thing's plugged in the wall, there's damage happening over here. So what you need to do is take the switch assembly out. And the problem is, in between the faceplate here, there's a circuit board that all these switches mount to, but it's completely enclosed in here. There's no airflow. The big problem with that is this blank area right here, where there's no switches. Well, there's no switches there kind of for a reason. There's parts in there. And one of those parts gets, I don't want to say nuclear hot, but man, it gets cooking. And this one is no exception. So you can see, nice clean radio. Like I say, I haven't even cleaned it. And man, there's a light layer of dust there you can see. But yeah, it's just, man, no flocking on the metal, or oxidation. It just looks mint. But the problem is that little circuit board. So you'll need to take out 4 screws. You can see there's in each of the corners, there's a screw holds that in. Now you can usually get in there. You don't need any fancy 90-degree ratchet screwdrivers. Just a regular screwdriver. May have to hold it slightly at an angle, but they all 4 come out fairly easily. And here's why we do this. See that? Black nastiness. We don't like black circuit boards. You can see how cooked it is. That resistor right there gets really hot. And you see what I mean by it's trapped? You've got a switch assembly on this side. You've got a switch underneath. You've got sheet metal along this side, which is the side of the radio. You've got sheet metal up here, which is the top of the radio. And you've got a faceplate here blocking it, and the circuit board in the back. There's absolutely no airflow here for this thing. And it just sits in its own heat and destroys this circuit board. And if I get this flipped around here, and you can see it just bakes straight on through to the back side of the board. The back is burned. Usually what you'll see is the clocks just stop working. Because this is a voltage regulator circuit right here is what this is. And what you'll see is you'll start to have clock problems. It's not actually a problem with the clock. The problem is right here. It's because a lot of times the circuit traces, they're cooked. They'll literally, you just reach in here with your fingernail and scratch the board and the circuit traces will fall off. Or the solder has been so overheated for such a long time. And this one's starting to get to that point. But yeah, the solder's just deteriorated and it's starting to crumble away. So do yourself a favor, take your top cover off. Like I say, even if you're not going to do anything else to the radio, at the very least, take the top cover off, take the 4 screws out. The biggest thing you need to do is take that resistor off Now, I will install a new one with longer leads and actually leave it up off the board some. But if you don't have that, at the very least, just remove it from this side of the board and just stick it on this side of the board. That alone will save a lot of headache. Now, if you have new ones, or you could get a new one, then you can actually leave the leads a little bit long and let it so it's, maybe sits like that far off the board. But because there's nothing, zoom out here a little bit, it's not like there's anything behind here. Good Lord, there's several inches till you get to this heatsink, so there's lots of area in here. Just move that to the back. Now, I will usually, a lot of times, depends how bad the board is, but yeah, this one's in pretty good shape. So everything else can probably stay there. I will desolder every single one of those components and resolder it because the solder is baked. It's just, it's starting to get to that crumbly point. It's starting to deteriorate. So it's a good idea while you're doing this, just desolder all of these little parts right here and resolder it and save yourself some future headaches. Because the last thing you want to do is have the board destroyed, because it'll eventually just more or less burn a hole right through this thing over time. So let me get that done. Then I guess the only thing I have left to do to this radio is unlock the clarifier on this one and do an alignment. Basically the same thing on both of them. This is about the only additional thing I have to do to this one compared to that mobile. I did have the clock module loose here because if you're recapping one of these, don't forget there's an electrolytic capacitor on here you need to change. Just 2 screws again from the back side. You can get them with a regular screwdriver, no fancy tools needed. There's a screw right in the center of the board on either side. Take those 2 screws out. You can pull this board out and you can desolder it. Now on these later chassis, this radio and that Grant LT, they both share a similar problem. There are later versions. Like I say, this is the last version of this radio, and the Grant LT, it's even newer than this. I mean, they're still old radios, but it's newer than this. But even this radio suffers from it. Poor soldering. Yeah, I don't know if solder skyrocketed in price back when they made these things or what, but man, there's not much of it. I mean, they really did a poor job on soldering these circuit boards. And it's not like we're talking about somebody in there with a soldering iron. All of these, pretty much for decades now, it's, my God, probably 50 years, they've been wave soldering. Components are stuffed into a board, it's run through an automated process, and you can look that up on YouTube or the internet, how wave soldering works. But it's a big machine, big molten bath of solder. It's called wave soldering because it actually forms little waves in there, little plunger in there, basically kind of like the ocean, have little waves in it, and the crest of that solder wave comes up and comes across the underside of the circuit board. That's actually what solders it, is that molten bath of solder, that little pump, the wave, just basically kisses the bottom of the board. It solders all of the components in one fell swoop. And it's reliable. I mean, you look at high-quality manufactured stuff, they don't have problem soldering, but yeah, consumer-level stuff, I don't know what happened. They used to not do too bad of a job, and then it started getting bad, and it's just never gotten any better. Yeah, I don't get it. Technology for stuff like that has improved vastly, but quite honestly, CB radios, soldering quality has actually decreased over the years. I don't know, lack of attention to, I'd say if it's the operators operating the machines, cheaper machines, I don't know. I don't manufacture CB radios, so I have no idea. But yeah, so, like I say, it's just something to be aware of as you progress in time. Closer and closer to today. Keep an eye on solder joints. It just, yeah, and it's just cheap products like this. I know people are gonna say, "Oh, it's not a cheap radio, Mike." Well, yeah, it is. It's not a several $1,000 amateur radio or a couple $1,000 home stereo system. This isn't a premium electronics component. This is disposable electronics, at least as far as companies like Uniden or any of them, Cobra, you name a company. This is disposable electronics. You use it, it breaks, you throw it away, you buy a new one. That's what they want you to do. But yeah, the soldering, man, just wow. I resoldered a bunch of them on this, and even more on that Grant LT. Yeah, that was just wow. I mean, you just touch a component on the top side of the board and then you go and look at the underside of the board, you just broke the solder joint out. That's all you had to do, just move apart, just go whoop whoop, and that was it. Broke the solder joint out one time. It's like, man, that's just poor quality. So anyhow, let me get this fixed up. We'll next time you see this, it should be up and running. And like I say, I'll get the tape off the bezel here, because yeah, this is a really nice looking radio. Actually, both of them. This and the Grant looks really nice because it is new old stock. So I'll be back. Okay, so I've got her pretty much done now. The only thing I have to do is basically put the top cover on it and just wipe my fingerprints off of it, because there's not really any cleaning to do on the outside. There's kind of a one-ended conversation here. This guy's talking to somebody down in Baltimore. They're talking about the snow. Got about a foot here. Yeah, God, got to go outside and I guess snow blow again here soon. Spend the next couple hours cleaning the driveway out. But in any case, good working radio. You can see it's now turned on. I don't think I had it turned on initially. As I had said, best thing you can do for these radios, don't care if it's working. Even if somebody's restored your radio, do yourself a favor. Even if somebody says they've done the full package to it, just to be safe, take your top cover off. See if there's a big resistor hanging off the back side of this switchboard here. If it's not hanging off the back side, that means it didn't get relocated. I can't say that enough. That's the one thing that gets destroyed in every single one of these radios, and the only way to prevent it is to move the resistor to the back. I actually ended up replacing the, well, I was going to anyhow, because like I say, I like to leave the leads up, and I'll show you here in a second, but I like to leave it up off of the board for better air circulation. But this one had just completely drifted out of tolerance. We can get it to focus on there. You can see the one color band is pretty much just burned off of it. The second one should be right here. This is a 22 ohm resistor. So yeah, the second red bands, yeah, it's not really there anymore. It's kind of just been burned off of the resistor. But it was at I think 15 or 16 ohms. So yeah, it had just out of tolerance. I mean, that may not seem like much, 15 to 16. It's supposed to be 22, but you have to remember it's 5% tolerance resistor. So yeah, it doesn't need to go too many ohms out, and it's out of tolerance. So yeah, that has been replaced. And the one that I stuck in there is also physically bigger. When you do this, if you're going to change these, I would probably suggest, and actually I got to thinking about it, I'm going to start doing, after this one, I just ordered 50 of them. Probably never use them, but when I buy stuff, I buy lifetime supply. I ordered 50 10-watt 22 ohm resistors that are in the little heatsink. It's basically a resistor through a tubular-like heatsink that has the fins on the outside, but it has two mounting ears on it. And what I'm going to use those for is, in the future, just to dissipate the heat even more effectively, I'll run two wires off of the circuit board. I'm going to completely remove the resistor off of that circuit board. I'll drill two holes in this heat sink, and I'll actually attach that resistor, because it has, like I say, it has two mounting tabs. I can mount it to this heat sink. So now I've got a heat sink mounted to this heat sink. I can put a little bit of thermal compound behind it, and then that'll help to dissipate it into this larger heat sink. But yeah, like I say, anything you can do to cool this poor little miniature nuclear reactor down. And here is, get the camera swiveled around here enough. And maybe if I turn the radio a little bit, you can see. And let me grab a pair of pliers so I can hold this one in comparison size-wise so you can see it. You can see what I mean by it went physically bigger too. So if I hold that up even with the bottom of that resistor, you can see how much bigger it is. It's bigger around, longer, and that's an old resistor actually, probably 1980s, maybe 1970s vintage. That's I've got, God, probably a few tens of thousands of those, not that value, but of that style resistor. Sprague used to have a really nice line of components back in the day. A lot of manufacturers did. A lot of them have piddled away as other foreign companies have taken over the parts market. But Sprague had a product line called Q line, so Q is in Quebec. And they had a really nice line of film type resistors. And I like these resistors. Now this is a 2-watt resistor, but it's physically the size of about a 3-watt resistor. So it just gives it a little bit more surface area. Like I say, they're good premium quality resistors. It's also a 2%, so it's even higher tolerance. But the main thing is it's up, and it's maybe kind of hard to see. And no matter what I do, it's kind of hard to show. Get in at an angle. I'm trying to show how far up off the board it is, but it is about that far up off of the board. So like I say, lots of good airflow now. Let me get her spun back around here. So otherwise, I just, like I say, there wasn't much dirt on the inside. There was a little bit of dust, but dusted that off, went over it with a little bit of corrosion inhibiting oil. As I've said before, just use gun oil. In a spray can, spray a little bit on a rag, just lightly wipe down all the sheet metal surfaces. That'll keep this nice pristine looking sheet metal, pristine looking for much more time to come. Only modification that's been done to this now is the clarifier is unlocked. Other than that, bone stock radio. Only thing I have left to do actually on the inside is just reseal, put some wax in these cores here. But I had to take the wax out, the tamper-proof wax. Then we turn it off here and I'll flip it over as I bump the camera. And then same thing on the bottom side, also wipe it down with some of the anti-corrosive oil as well. But see, circuit board's nice and clean. Got all that nasty flux residue off, and yeah, this radio, man, it was close to as bad, honestly, as probably that Grant LT. Man, the solder connections on this thing were just, it just drives me nuts seeing stuff like that, man. I mean, come on, companies. And like I say, it's actually gotten worse over the years. Radios, even this radio, the Madison, earlier versions weren't that bad. As time went on, the soldering got worse, and it's just continued to get worse. You would think, like I say, you think stuff like that would get better, but oh well. Keep people like me in business. I mean, shoot. Especially with modern radios, you could stay in business just reflowing solder joints on circuit boards nowadays. So let me get the cover put back on this thing, and I'll let you show, or I'll show you how nice this thing looks put back together. Okay, and here we go, all back together now. Here's the mobile radio. Here's the base station. Really, I wouldn't even call them close cousins. It's almost like big brother, little brother. But yeah, this radio, like I say, just, man, such nice condition. The cover, spotless. Yeah, it's just like new. Only real flaw with the radio is right, and you can just barely can see it because of this radio is causing a little bit of a shadow. There's an imperfection right there. I can't even see it really in the viewfinder, but there is. There's an imperfection there. But yeah, other than that, yeah, about as close to new old stock condition as you're going to get for a 4th generation Madison. But so there you go. There's a pair of Unidens, a Grant LT, and a 4th generation Madison, done, ready to send back to the customer. Only thing I got to do now is I'll re-wrap some masking tape around the bezels to protect them, so they're in such pristine condition. We definitely don't want to get any scratches in those things. But so hope you enjoyed.